Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers postgame reaction show. Happy New Year, everybody. It is officially January 1st. I'm recording this the day after the Lakers-Cavs game and not directly postgame. I'm still a bit under the weather, took the day off, took a sick day, and just spent some time relaxing with family. Did watch the game, but did not end up going to it or writing or recording a post-game reaction after. See people starting to populate in the chat. What is up, everyone? Welcome. Hope you all had a happy new year with your family, your friends, your loved ones. And not the happiest New Year's Eve for the Lakers. They fell 122 to 110 to the Cleveland Cavaliers to drop LA to 18 and 14. They are 7th in the Western Conference right now, would be hosting a play-in game. And we have a lot to touch on, including this recent stretch from Austin Reaves, these 3 games in particular, as LA has really empowered him. And his usage has been right there with LeBron and AD in terms of leading the team and being heavily involved in the offense. We have the newcomers making their debut, Dorian Finney-Smith and Milton. And we have a bit of a, I'll say, small ball problem for the Lakers. Some of their smaller lineups have just not been performing well. And I think it might just be a fundamental limitation within the group in terms of some of these smaller lineups. But before we get into all of that, you guys know the drill. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. All right, so let's get into our 3 takeaways. Takeaway number 1 for me is going to be Austin Reaves' stellar stretch. So Austin nearly had his second triple-double in 3 games, ends up having 35 points, 9 rebounds, and 10 assists. 35 was a season high and tied his career high, 11 of 20 shooting. And I would even say he shot better than that, just because there was a couple of late, as the Lakers were trying to make a comeback over the last couple minutes, where they were just kind of trying to get shots up quickly, and he took a couple of rushed threes there. But 11 of 20 from the floor, 1 for 4 on threes, 12 for 13 from the free throw line. Again, 9 rebounds, 10 assists. Did have 4 turnovers, and I want to say 3 of them came in the first 6 minutes of the game. He really struggled, had a rough start. It was looking honestly similar to the Detroit game, where it wasn't so much that he was being overwhelmed with the physicality or the athleticism of Cleveland on the perimeter like Detroit, but he was kind of struggling to run the offense, grease the wheels, and just executing simple reads out of the pick and roll, and they were playing the passing lanes, and I thought they did a really good job, especially a Mobley, Jarrett Allen front line is as imposing as it gets from a 4-5 combination, just with their length, their athleticism, their defensive IQ. So Cleveland, I thought, did a really good job of shrinking the floor and really sort of limiting some of the reads that the Lakers could make. And I thought Austin struggled at first, also picked up a couple fouls. But then from that point on, he kind of flipped a switch and played, I would say, the final 3.5 quarters were as good as he's played in a game this season. And that's saying something considering the 2 previous games. So looking at Austin's last 3 games, 29 points a game, leads the team. He is second in field goal attempts to LeBron, 8.3 rebounds a game, 12 assists a game, 50% shooting from the floor, 44.4% shooting on threes, 85.2% shooting at the free throw line on 9 attempts a game. Now, one of those games was basically without AD, the Golden State game on Christmas, and one of those games was without LeBron, the Sacramento game. So that's obviously going to skew his numbers a little bit in terms of his usage being higher, more shot attempts, more assist opportunities, etc. At the same time, he just scored his season high and tied his career high in a game that LeBron and AD both played in against the best team in the NBA right now and one of the best defenses in the NBA right now. So that kind of, well, there's certainly an element of the recent stretch in LA, further empowering Austin and him continuing to grow and develop, and LeBron and AD not being available for the full stretch. Again, he probably played his best game with both of them in the lineup and against arguably the best team in the NBA right now. So I think what I thought Austin did really well was, if you actually look at Cleveland's team, despite them, like, they're a very high IQ team. I think that was the biggest thing that stood out to me. A lot of good team defenders, positional defenders, not necessarily like they have Mobley and Allen, who are both all defense caliber guys, and Mobley, former guy in the defensive player of the year race. But everyone else is just kind of solid, with the exception, Garland's pretty tiny. I think Sam Merrill is relatively limited physically, but everyone else is just kind of like a solid defender who can largely keep guys in front of them or funnel them to the spots of help. And this is a team that, there were several possessions there where you saw Max Strus just rotating baseline to baseline, corner to corner, and almost kind of zoning up at the back line himself and covering all this ground. And they're just a really smart team defensively. But if you look at it from like an individual perspective, there shouldn't really be anyone here, unless they're putting Mobley on Austin. None of these guys should be able to stay in front of him or really bother him. And I thought he did a good job of picking on, be it Garland or Ty Jerome, Sam Merrill, even Strus or LeVert, but just getting those guys into the middle of the floor. And then that's when he got into his bag with the shiftiness, the craftiness. And, I thought he had a lot of floaters and runners and just little mid-range pull-up shots, was able to create separation off the dribble and with his shoulder. Also was able to get to the free throw line. Again, 13 free throw attempts, did a really good job with head fakes and just thinking the game and kind of reading defenders' footworks and how to footwork, and how to just attack those guys. So I thought he did a really good job of attacking them and not, making sure it wasn't within the vicinity of Mobley and Allen. The Cavs also ran some zone. They're kind of mixing in some like 2-1-2 zone and also 2-3 zone. I thought the Lakers just did a really good job, and ended up being a lot of like two-man game with Austin and LeBron, Austin and AD, and Austin was just thriving off that. So if we look at the post-trade world, the post-D'Lo world, it's clear that LA is really empowering Austin. He has looked the part of a legit number 3, I think, the past 3 games. And I think the usage is certainly here to stay. I don't think he's going to quite be at the level like above LeBron and AD consistently, but him as the true number 3, like there's been a distancing of just like Austin is that number 3 guy. It's clear cut now, and really that there's no debate over the hierarchy of the offense and how things are going to run. LA did stagger LeBron and Austin a bit more, and you saw some LeBron-led small ball units, and then Austin and AD being paired together more, and kind of just like the separation there when they weren't going with the starters. But I don't think Austin's going to average 29 points a game and 12 assists a game the rest of the season. If he does, then I mean, that he's clearly the third best player, if not even potentially better, depending on what LeBron and AD do. But I think more realistically, he can be in that 19 to 21 point range and 6 to 7, 6.5 to 7.5 assists with good percentages. And I think putting Max in the starting lineup and then now adding in Dorian, Cam played a big role tonight, like putting those guys on some of the primary guys, be it Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, that allows Austin to not necessarily take a break defensively, but not have to tax himself defensively as hard as he had to earlier in the season. So you do that, and you kind of reduce his defensive role a little bit. You increase the offensive role, and this is the player that you're getting. And it's a guy that's given the Lakers a lot of juice, a lot of downhill just verve that they have lacked at times. And I thought there were stretches tonight where, I mean, they went away from AD for far too long. I thought overall, despite him putting up good numbers, the 28, 13, 3 steals, 2 blocks, I thought Jarrett Allen outplayed him head to head, at least neutralized him at a minimum. But I think if we're really looking at the impact both guys had, Jarrett Allen had some timely offensive rebounds, some timely cuts and rolls and dives to the rim for dunks and layups. It felt like, I mean, he went 12 for 14 from the floor. Like anytime he was around the rim, he was finishing often over AD or around him. Then there was times where they were able to bring AD up in the pick and roll and then really exploit that with Allen rolling to the rim. And as JJ talked about after the game, the Lakers' low man help was really poor tonight. Cleveland ended up getting 10 offensive rebounds, 24 second chance points. So I thought at a minimum, 80 was neutralized, kind of matched by Jarrett Allen. I would say in the totality of the game, I felt Jarrett Allen was more impactful. And you also, I mean, 80 went 12 for 23, did hit a couple threes, but LA was running some like flare screens for AD to shoot threes, which I didn't really understand. He did have it going and the jump shot has been better, but I thought he was able to attack Jarrett Allen a few times off the dribble and score on him. And it felt like they kind of went away from that. Then LeBron had a hot start. He scored, I want to say 12, 13 points kind of quickly in this game and then ended up finishing with 23, but was also someone who was not as involved offensively. So I think Lakers are still kind of finding the balance within this new hierarchy, but I will say Austin Reaves has looked really, really good. LA has gone 2-1 in this stretch, with him being more highlighted offensively. And again, I don't think that the 29 points, 8 rebounds, 12 assists is here to stay, but could he average 19, 20 points, 5 rebounds, and like 6.5, 7 assists? I think so. And doing so efficiently and doing so while still being overall a plus defender. I thought he rebounded well. He had a slow start defensively, again, picking up some fouls, but then I thought he did a better job on Garland in the starting group minutes and then later chasing around Max Strus in the fourth quarter. So I think overall, this is the best stretch Austin has played in his career. And he's taken the steps and the strides. And even with the turnovers, like JJ's talked about, kind of having to live with some of the turnovers with Austin. And I thought that, again, he had 3 turnovers early, then he had 1 the rest of the game. And he really did a good job of recalibrating and just sort of, I would say recalibrating the way that he approached Cleveland and the way that the Lakers attacked them in the pick and roll. So that to me is probably the stickiest thing in terms of like longer term takeaway from this for me is just clearly the Lakers have elevated Austin to a certain status. And right now he's living up to it. He is making good on all the last 2 offseason conversations about Austin being the number 3 guy and LA wanting to empower him as that second ball handler to LeBron. And, I think he showed a lot of growth to end last season. He had a good start to the season, then had a bit of a dip there, then has since rebounded. And then especially coming back from this injury, he's been playing the best basketball of his career. So that to me was the biggest takeaway, again, in terms of just what we can really learn or where the Lakers are at. Now, takeaway number 2 for me is going to be the first impressions of the newcomers. And it was relatively quiet, which was kind of what I expected. I didn't expect either of these guys to necessarily come in and make a big splash. But looking at the box score, Dorian Finney-Smith played 20 minutes, was 1 for 4, 0 for 2 on threes, had 2 good looks from beyond the arc, missed both of them, had that. So his first basket was 80, actually airballed a jumper over Jarrett Allen, and I believe it was Jarrett Allen, and DFS swoops in for an offensive rebound. I forgot if it was a dunk or a lay-in, but basically alley-oop from AD inadvertently. And so that was his first bucket. Then he missed a lob from LeBron. I want to say it was to start the fourth or to start the second. It might have been to start the second, I want to say, with the small ball group. And then had a couple of 2 rebounds, both offensive. I thought he did a good job corner crashing and being active. And for me with DFS, the thing that really stood out people are going to look. I mean, we know that when a shooter, a guy who's shooting the ball well comes to LA, there's always the pressure of, are they going to continue to shoot well? And there's the years long narratives of guys who have not shot as well in a Lakers uniform as they did in other spots. You think of like a Malik Beasley, a Wayne Ellington, and those are just two guys off the top of my head. But like there's several shooters through the last few years that have come here and not shot the ball the way they do. I mean, Torian Prince has shot the ball actually relatively well, but especially now, like the way he shot in Milwaukee, and you just go through the list, and like for whatever reason, guys come to the Lakers and don't tend to shoot as well. But I thought Dorian Finney-Smith made a big impact defensively. I didn't think it was a coincidence that he was the only bench player with a positive plus minus, because look at it, like he guarded everybody from Donovan Mitchell to Evan Mobley. And it wasn't just the switching, because the Lakers switch a lot. So of course, guys are going to be cross-matched or defending different guys within a possession, excuse me. But with DFS, he actually was guarding those guys like to start possession. So he had stints on Donovan where he was pressuring him, and I thought it did a good job funneling him in the pick and roll with AD, or if it was LeBron or Rui there, they would just switch that. But then he also had matchups against Evan Mobley. He did switch on to Jarrett Allen at times, and then he also was guarding Strus, and like you just saw the defensive versatility there. And that's something that it's not necessarily going to be reflected on the box score. You could look at it from like a matchup data perspective in terms of like how those guys shot with DFS as the primary defender. But I just felt like his defensive versatility, like, of course, there was an offensive impact with not having D'Lo, and I think that was clear. LA's bench was outscored 32-12, and they really missed that bench punch. I also think in general, this was a game. So Christian Koloko was inactive. Jackson Hayes was cleared, but they ended up not playing him. And Gabe Vincent missed with a strained oblique. He's day to day. I thought they really missed Gabe tonight in particular. I thought this would have been a good matchup for him with some of their smaller bench guards. Those aren't really guys like a Ty Jerome, Sam Merrill, even a Max Strus. Like he could. Those guys don't have like overwhelming physical advantages over Gabe. So I thought this actually would have been a good matchup for Gabe. But sorry, my computer just froze up. But that said, like I thought DFS did a really good job defensively in terms of shape shifting to what LA needed him to do. So if it was be a point of attack guy and pressure the ball, if it was be a chaser and chase guys around screens, if it was switching on to bigs and battling the post, like he had one really nice possession. I want to say it was the second half, and it was when he first came in I want to say the third quarter. Mobley was like facing up against him on the right side of the floor, and he just stonewalled him. And having that type of defensive versatility, especially once Gabe is back, if Vando comes back soon, like you see the defensive pieces that the Lakers have now. And I just felt DFS was a Swiss Army knife defensively. And of course, he's going to need to contribute more offensively. I think the rebounding could be a little bit better. But I thought, had a couple of assists, like played within the offense. There's always that element with new guys of you don't want to overstep your capabilities and do things, out of your comfort zone or you don't necessarily take the shots you normally would take because you want to kind of fit in. And DFS talked about it after the game that he doesn't even know the offense yet. He was just kind of out there trying to set screens, cut, space the floor, and just play basketball, but not necessarily knowing the intricacies of the Lakers offense. And JJ talked about simplifying the offense for this game for DFS and Shake Milton, just to kind of let them figure things out, on the fly, and playing a lot of two-man game, a lot of pick and roll, and then having the other three guys on the floor, which included Shake in DFS just spacing out. So I thought DFS overall, like you saw the flashes and the potential of what he can do. Defensively, I thought he was solid. Offensively, of course, blowing the open lob, that's one you'd like him to finish or at least come down with and then go back up and finish. But I think all things considered, like it was a solid debut for him, and he's not a guy it's going to pop in the box score, especially with him coming off the bench and potentially playing less than he did in Brooklyn. but just coming in and being a positive defender and not really making mistakes on that end. And he had one possession where he poked the ball loose, and I just think he was a bit disruptive and just a really solid defender. So I thought, all things considered, for at least my expectations, DFS was largely in line with that. It made a positive impact. And then with Shake, you saw, so offensively, he only played 10 minutes, had 6 points, 2 for 4 shooting. All of them were 3-pointers, a couple of late shot clock attempts. So not really going to hold him to those. Like one of them was an air ball, hit a couple of corner threes and just shaking loose to get open, no pun intended, and had a couple of rebounds. I actually thought his 2 rebounds were both in traffic, like with bigger players around him, and he did a good job kind of muscling his way in. He's got really long arms. You can kind of see it just when he's running up and down the floor. Like he's got a long wingspan for his size, and I thought he leveraged that well. Defensively, he had one possession that he actually got yanked after this. It was early in the fourth quarter where I forgot who the shooter was. I don't think it was Strus. It might have been I think it was Ty Jerome in the corner where, it might have been Strus. It was Strus or Ty, but I don't remember who it was, but it was someone in the corner in transition. He is the low man, kind of weak side guy, but you got to be in the passing lane in that instance, and he was just too low. And so he allowed whoever sprayed the ball out, might have been Garland, to kick it to the corner shooter. And by the time he rotated, he was too late. The shooter made the 3. And I thought he kind of fell asleep for that possession defensively. And it cost the Lakers. I think that pushed the Cavs lead to 16. And that's when he got pulled. And then they ended up going back with some of the starters to try and go on a run there, which they ended up getting, I think, within 5, if I'm not mistaken. But overall, like Shake, they let him bring the ball up a little bit, didn't run any sets or really any pick and roll with him. He was primarily a stationary shooter. And I think if Gabe is back soon, and potentially as soon as Thursday night, maybe Shake doesn't play, or again, he's more of a fringe guy. But I think that the shooting was nice to see. If you look at his season-long splits, he's not really a corner shooter. He doesn't take many. He's more of an above the break guy, creating out of pick and rolls or pick and pops if you're doing like guard to guard screening. So he hasn't been as much of a high volume corner shooter, which is the way that the Lakers were kind of using him. So I think that they got to get him acclimated to the offense. Defensively, he's got the length, but I think he's pretty upright in his stance a lot. And I think he's kind of just, I would say, like average to like slightly below average defensively, at least based on what he looked like in that first game. Didn't really stand out. Wasn't really targeted because Cleveland was targeting a lot. They targeted Dalton a lot. They were targeting Austin. They were targeting Rui. And they did not really target Shake. So I guess that's a positive. They didn't feel like he was a guy that they could necessarily just go at relentlessly. But he also was in a lot of small ball units. So there wasn't necessarily, they didn't necessarily have to target him. They could just go to the rim. And if they were able to draw out LeBron or DFS, it was going to be a layup line, or LA was going to have to over rotate, kick the shooters. And that's how Cleveland played. So I think overall, like Shake, both guys were kind of in line with what I expected. There's always going to be some element of guys getting acclimated and learning the playbook, getting comfortable with their teammates. Ideally, both guys come in and just play great, hit all their shots. It's a seamless transition, but that's not how these things tend to work. So I would say for Shake, I would like to see him get a little bit more involved in the offense in terms of being more of like a secondary playmaker and them leveraging some of his ball handling and off the dribble juice. And then for DFS, I think the shot selection was good. I thought the shot profile was good. Like, let him take open threes, and then if he could get some scraps around the rim with alley-oops or cuts or whatever, that's fine. But the defensive versatility to me was encouraging from him. And then the final takeaway for me, and this is going to be another big picture one that I think the Lakers really have to figure out, is the current small ball problem. So as I mentioned, Jackson Hayes was cleared, but he did not play. JJ had said pregame it was TBD on Jackson's workload, and clearly just wasn't at a level where he could play. Christian Coloco, because of the two-way contract, there's a limitation to how many games he could play in. And I don't know, he was listed as inactive. There was no injury designation, so I don't know if there's an injury and maybe they just didn't list it, or they've done that a couple times this season with certain guys, or if it was just the two-way situation and South Bay needing him or whatever. But this felt like a game where they could have used Christian, and JJ's talked about, like when I did the reaction off the DFS trade, I said I could envision DFS, Rui, and LeBron playing together and just switching across that front line. And we saw a couple of shifts of that, and it didn't really work. So I don't have the exact three-man data right in front of me, but overall, I mean, Rui was a -7. Lakers were -17 with Rui on the floor, -11 with LeBron on the floor. Most of that came in the small ball unit. So they went with Rui, LeBron, DFS, Dalton, and Shake. That was a unit that saw a couple shifts and actually had some success I think kind of in the initial bit, but then it felt like that was when Strus got hot and started to distance themselves. And it just didn't feel like that group really worked together. And looking at it kind of bigger picture, I will pull this up for you guys to, I'll share my screen. Cleaning the glass here. So if we look at cleaning the glass, I have put the lineup as LeBron and Rui on, because when the Lakers play small, they tend to put both LeBron and Rui as the 4-5 combo, and 80 Christian Coloco, Jackson Hayes off, because those have been the three centers this season. Christian Wood has not played. Jared Vanderbilt has not played. So those are the three real centers that have played this season. And so basically this is all the small ball lineups. I mean, if you look at all of them, they designate LeBron at the 5, Rui at the 4. I feel like it's often more Rui at the 5, but doesn't really matter. But if you look at it, they've been really bad. -19 points per 100 possessions, only 190 possessions. So that's about a little less than 2 games worth, but they're in the 18th percentile offensively here, as you can see with the points per 100 possessions there. They are terrible defensively. 126.9 defensive rating in the 1 percentile, which is basically as bad as it gets. I guess technically you could go have the 0 percentile, which they have here, an effective field goal percentage. But that's like, I mean, these lineups have just not been good. And if you filter it any other way, so I'll filter it just LeBron on, and this would include LeBron at the 5, and maybe Rui isn't in. Like this lineup here is Armel Traore, LeBron, Cam Reddish, Max Christie, Gabe Vincent. These lineups are -25.1 and 7th percentile offensively, 0 percentile defensively. And then let's take LeBron off and just put Rui on. So again, not specifying whether LeBron is on with him, even though typically he is. Also -18.6. So basically, to sum this all up, when the Lakers have played without a real center, they have not been good this season. And it is a relatively small sample size. So certainly it's been skewed by some of the recent struggles. And we could go back to like Golden State, Christmas, it worked, right? But there have been some recent stretches where it has not been as effective. And on the totality of the season, it just has not worked per the lineup data that we have available. And I think that there's a few reasons for it. One, I think it can be matchup based, right? So Golden State tends to play smaller, and they're not going to necessarily punish you in the paint the way that a team like Cleveland can. And not even necessarily with Cleveland, it wasn't even so much the paint. It was just that the Lakers then had to over rotate, and that generated so many open threes. And JJ talked about Cleveland playing a similar kind of wheel style offense to Memphis, and they got the Lakers in the blender, and they had to rotate and try to cover ground. And it just felt like Cleveland was pinging the ball around the perimeter to open shooters, and every possession would just end up somehow with Cleveland having an open wing or corner three. And so I think if you're going to go with a small ball lineup, you have to do one of two things. You have to either be so good defensively where you can switch across all five positions or four of the five positions, keep the ball in front of you, and stop dribble penetration, stop them creating 2-on-1 advantages, creating open kick out possessions, open shots at the rim, which the Lakers have, clearly based on the numbers as you saw, most of these configurations with LeBron and Rui together have been in the 0 or first percentile defensively, or you have to be so good offensively that you can just basically outscore the opponent and you're generating shots at such an efficient level at the rim or getting to the free throw line or creating threes. That was also not the case last night. So I think part of this had to do with Gabe being out. Part of it had to do with no Christian, no Jackson. And those were all factors that if Gabe is healthy, I think he gets some of the Cam minutes, some of the Shake Milton minutes, and with the way he's been shooting lately, like it's probably a slight net positive. But also if Jackson or Christian is available and Lakers just they can go with, and maybe it's going giant and going like Christian, LeBron, Rui, DFS, or at least having two of those three next to Christian to have a bigger front court. That to me is more sustainable, makes more sense defensively, because I just don't think we've seen some good spurts from the small ball looks, but they have not been consistently good enough on either side of the ball to really warrant going smaller. And I think it's really just come down to Jackson's been out and Christian's obviously been out. So they haven't had technically a roster center, an official roster center available. But then also coming back to Christian Coloco, there's been games where he's been a DNP-CD. There's been games where he plays one shift in the first half and then doesn't play a shift in the second half. So JJ actually complimented him last night and was talking about the trust that he's earned. And I think he's earned an element of trust, but he obviously doesn't have the full trust that a Jackson or a Christian would have. Whereas I think if Jackson and Christian are available, like at least one of the two is playing basically every single night. I don't see the Lakers really going centerless consistently. I could be wrong on that. And maybe, clearly like last night there was kind of a shift to that. There's been a more recent shift to them playing smaller, but I think right now with the current group, now maybe they make a trade and it changed the way that the roster looks slightly, and they have either another scorer, ball handler, shot creator that helps the small ball units, or they get another big wing defender or even like shooting guard style defender that helps some of these lineups. But right now, I just felt like they went with, because again, they went with LeBron, Rui, DFS, Dalton, and Shake, and it was just not enough getting downhill, not enough quality shots. And then defensively, it was a layup line, it was offensive rebounds, and it was a bunch of driving kick open threes. So I think LA has got to kind of figure out the right balance with when to go small versus when not to, and also figuring out ways to either, if you're going to go small, you have to be better offensively or defensively. You can't be bad at both. And again, like going small, it's typically you want to leverage your speed advantage or your perimeter advantage to attack off the dribble, to get downhill, driving kick game, and be so efficient offensively that you force the other team to downsize. Or you want to be so locked down defensively. Like if you think about a team like an OKC or a Boston, those teams can go small and put 5 wings and guards out there, and they could just switch and keep you in front of them. Lakers have had that in certain matchups, but I didn't think Cleveland was the right matchup. And again, there's some circumstances out of their control. I don't think Jackson was quite ready to return. Christian was inactive for whatever reason, and Gabe was out. So all those things kind of chipped away at their ability to play small effectively, or to just not play small and to play a one big or two big look. But I think LA's got to, of course, get healthy, which is somewhat out of their control. But I think they need to be more selective with their small ball looks and really figure out ways to be more effective, because the lineups have just not been good, right? At least up to this point in the season. On the aggregate, the small ball sample size has been discouraging, I would say. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A. I see we have some super chats, and yeah. First one from Pieter K. Yo, fellas, let's hook Jovan up with some likes for real, for real. I appreciate you. Always banging the drums for the likes. And yes, if you are watching right now and you have not liked, please consider doing so. Second one from Golden. Would you rather have Sharp or Richards as a big? To me, it honestly comes down to cost. And theoretically, the Lakers could have had Sharp in the trade with Brooklyn instead of Milton. I would have preferred that. I didn't get clarity as to, like, was he part of the talks, or was that a sticking point? Did they inquire about him and maybe Brooklyn said no, or they wanted an extra asset or something? So I don't have clarity on that, but I would have preferred Sharp over Milton as that second, basically minimum piece. I would say, Richards has put up better numbers and on paper maybe looks to be the better player. But to me, it would probably just come down to costs. Like if it's a second, I doubt they cost. I doubt they cost the same. So it kind of depends on, like, what does Charlotte want for Richards and how big of a gap is there between Sharp and Richards. But I would be open to either one of those as a potential low cost, low risk backup gamble, I guess. Like, they're not the sure thing that a Walker Kessler, even a Jonas Valanciunas, like, I think he's a sure thing. Just the problem is we know what the certainty is. We know the defensive limitations and whatnot. Vucevic, Robert Williams is a sure thing when he's healthy, but that kind of makes him not a sure thing because we don't know about the health. Jakob Poeltl, also a bit of a so I think there's some bigs where you kind of know what you're going to get, good and bad. I would say that Sharp and Richards, we haven't really seen them in this situation, that they've been on rebuilding teams and in kind of hectic environments. So to see them in a bit more of a stable situation, a winning environment, what does that look like? We don't quite know. But if the prices for some of those other guys gets a little bit too high, or the Lakers can't get them for whatever reason, and they have to get, or they decide they want to get another big, I'd be open to either one of those. Super chat from Brandon Omeng. What's management's fascination with Rui? I don't see it. He has very little impact if he's not scoring, doesn't rebound, play defense. We need to trade him, in my opinion, TBH. One thing with Rui, I will say, I agree with the first part of this. I do think when Rui has a subpar shooting night, it does affect the other parts of his game. That said, if we just pull up the box score here, he had 5 rebounds, which was third on the team behind AD and Austin. Now, I do think Rui had a bad game. Cam closed over him, which I think shows like they were limited in terms of options to close, just healthy bodies that they could play. And so they went AD, LeBron, Cam, Austin, Max. And Max missed some good looks, but I thought the defense was solid. That's why they closed with him. Austin, AD, LeBron are all closing locks. So it really came down to that fifth spot. Rui was playing so poorly. what was tied with Max with the worst plus minus at minus 17, that JJ just pulled him and decided to go with Cam. I actually kind of felt that they should have closed with Dorian, and even if it didn't lead to anything, maybe just give him a little bit of a boost of like closing with him in his first game. I also don't think Cam had a steal, had some good plays defensively, but was also 0 for 3. He just continues to be such a, just gets good looks, but doesn't often convert them. And I think has really regressed offensively the last few weeks, that he's pretty much just a one-way player at this point. And I think his defense is consistently solid, but there are nights where it's great, and that's when you can maybe play him more. I don't feel like tonight was one of those great nights, though. He did have, I thought, especially in the first half, some pretty good stretches. I just think in the second half it wasn't as impactful. But with Rui, the other thing I want to say is, like, I think Rui had been playing really well lately. Like, I thought the Golden State game, I thought the Sacramento game in general, I think Rui's defense the past month the low man, as a helper, he's been blocking shots, getting steals. He's been rebounding the ball well. I think the one issue with Rui is, aside from the scoring impacting the rest of his game, is just like the floor can be very low. And that's where I think it's kind of similar to D'Lo, where when he's making shots, I do think he contributes in other ways, in non-offensive ways, more than D'Lo did. But like the rebounding, the defense, it can be there. And when it is, it looks really good. And Rui looks like sometimes a bargain on the contract that he's on. But then when the floor drops and he's not making shots, he's not rotating, he's not boxing out, he's not being physical. Like even the first possession of the game, I thought really kind of set the tone, where Evan Mobley just blew by him. And Evan Mobley is long, he's athletic, but like he should just blow by Rui from the left wing and go get a layup on him. So I thought like that really kind of set the tone for the night for Rui. I've been saying I think that the bar should be higher to trade Rui, just with the way that he's playing. I also think that with the new offensive hierarchy and just maybe having fewer offensive weapons, they might need Rui scoring more. What I think could be the solution here is something I talked about in the trade reaction video, where maybe you just move Rui to the bench and put in DFS as the fifth starter, and you go DFS and Max on the perimeter. You have two guys who are both you're basically 40% as at least DFS on the season. Max is a starter, 40% 3-point shooters, and then both guys can defend multiple positions. And then you sub out LeBron, bring in Rui, and you kind of go empower like Rui and Dalton as your two bench scorers. I would say that the two instant offense guys, they have a green light when they come in. That I think could potentially be a solution here to, because again, when it's right with Rui, it looks really good. And I think for the most part, he's been playing pretty well for the last month. Like I think in my read on the situation, sometimes there's a bit of a overreaction to Rui's bad games. But again, the floor is so low that's where it's like when he's bad, he's pretty bad. And when he's good, he's pretty good. And I think there's been more good than bad overall, but still you'd like to see a higher floor from him, especially for the Lakers to get to where they want to get to. He can't have these types of games consistently or even every like 3 or 4 games. Like that's got to be a once in every 8 to 10 games rather than once in every 3 or 4. So, but I think that there's always a price for everything, right? So the right deal, I think you maybe consider trading him, but for now, my understanding is they like his fit next to LeBron and AD. They like the ability to play multiple positions. They like the defensive versatility. They think he's developed as a shooter and just developed more into a winning player. And I largely agree. I just think there are nights when it looks pretty bad, and last night was one of them. Jason Sutton, thank you for the super chat. DFS looked good defensively. He just needs to get acclimated to the Lakers system, but it's only a matter of time before he replaces Rui in the starting lineup. It makes too much sense. Plus, JJ loves him. Yeah, so I I agree. And I thought it was interesting. So I asked JJ at the practice, the first practice that DFS and Shake were at, about the starting lineup. And I basically just presented it to him. I said, you have the starting lineup, like you've been looking for a starting lineup. You finally found one that's playing well. Rui's playing well. Max is playing well. But then you bring in DFS, who's been a starter basically for 5 seasons. What do you think? Like, how do you view that situation? And how do you view the starting lineup? And like, are you going to put him in it? Are you going to bring him off the bench? And he was clear, as JJ's been all season, about the starters, about expectations. And he was like, I already talked to DFS and I told him that he's going to be coming off the bench. We have a starting lineup that's been working. Rui and Max have been playing well. We're going to stick with that. And that DFS is all about winning, and that he's going to do, whatever the team needs. But a question or two later, he got asked about DFS again. And then all of a sudden it was like, well, whether he's starting or coming off the bench. And then like there was another thing where he also referenced potentially DFS starting. And I was like, okay, so like when asked specifically about it, he gave a direct answer and kind of sort of, just killed that potential storyline of like, who's going to start Rui versus DFS, and like, is it a competition or whatever? And of course, as a coach, like you want to kind of kill those things from popping up and becoming a distraction or whatever. But at the same time, he did then allude to a couple times later DFS potentially with the starters or like as a starter. So I thought that was maybe him. And even within my answer at the end, he was like, I've always told you guys, like, I like to evaluate the starting lineup, continually and sort of see how the season's going, how players are playing, and then potentially change that. So I would not be surprised if LA struggles here in the next few games, and DFS continues to just kind of play his role and be solid defensively. I wouldn't be surprised if he ultimately takes the starting spot from Rui. But for now, it seems like they want to stick with this group. Rich Forever Rondo, thank you for the super chat. Lakers need an elite scoring guard, Levine or Fox. I like in theory, I agree. I think in at a minimum, they need another perimeter scorer. So let me pull that back up. They need another perimeter scorer, and that to me is clear. Now, one thing I didn't really touch on as much, and because I'd like to see what this looks like when Gabe is back, is it feels like they are going to try to empower more Dalton and more Gabe on ball reps. Already we saw Dalton handle the ball a little bit in transition, but also a couple of screening actions for him with the ball in his hands. There was one play where he got downhill that was pretty nice. But with Dalton, I felt like we saw some of that. And there's that stretch where Rui was out and they were a bit depleted, and that's when Dalton took off. But since that stretch, he's primarily gone back to just being catch and shoot guy, spot up guy, running around screens and being more of an off ball guy. But if you go back to his scouting profile and what he did at Tennessee, Dalton was a guy who had the ball in his hands a lot. And I don't think he's quite good enough at that to be that like full time, of course, but I think the Lakers can find pockets of the game to get him more involved offensively with the ball in his hands and to find easy baskets to create for him to kind of get him going in a rhythm, because he just has not been in a rhythm for the most part lately, outside of good game against Sacramento, good game against Golden State, but basically been on a 3-week slump before that and has largely been in a slump for the past month, outside of a couple of exceptions. So I think Dalton is one potential solution. I also think Gabe, like, remember, Gabe was a guy who was the number 3 scoring option and a starter on a Miami team. Not it might have been like number 4 overall, but at times was the number 3 guy for a Miami team that made the finals. And I think with Gabe, we've seen he is more of a rhythm-based guy who kind of needs the ball to get going. So I wonder if he can also step up and take some of the usage and be more of a pick and roll shot creator the way that he was in Miami. And especially now that it looks like he's more comfortable offensively, his shot's been falling more. Is that an option for Gabe to kind of just get going more? So I think those are 2 internal solutions. To your point about external solutions, I agree that I think they could still use another. I don't even know if it necessarily has to be a guard. It could be a wing. I think it doesn't. I just think they need another scorer probably in general. But LaVine, the problem with LaVine is that just the contracts are so hard to match, especially now that you traded D'Lo. If you were gonna trade for LaVine, you probably needed D'Lo in there to get up to that, like, what is he, like 43 million, something like that. So it's really hard to get there without giving up Austin. And I think just knowing how much the Lakers value Austin and also how Austin's playing, I think it's really difficult to make the case to put Austin in a LaVine trade. If you're not putting Austin in the LaVine trade, it's just tough to get there. Like Rui's 17, Gabe is at 11, and Vando's at 10.7. So that gets you to about 39. And then I guess you could throw in, you might have to throw in like 2 minimum guys to really get there. And then there's the whole, how does Chicago can only take back so many players, so much money, whatever. So I think LaVine seems to be unlikely, especially as long as the Lakers aren't willing to put Austin in that, which I don't think they would. And then De'Aaron is more realistic in terms of salary matching. Now, probably less realistic because I think if there's a real bidding war for De'Aaron Fox, the Lakers could easily be outbid by a Houston, a San Antonio. It would almost have to be him forcing his hand to the Lakers. But I think those two are obviously on the higher end of like potential outcomes. But in general, I agree with the premise that like they need another scorer because the offense has certainly taken a hit over the past month, and losing D'Lo only adds to that. Super chat from Eeg, HPN Jovan. Have you heard if there's real interest in Ingram? Also, why does the media, not you, LAL has 3 firsts to move when they only trade 2? Strange. Okay, well, I've addressed the first thing, but I will address it again because I feel like there's just so much confusion with it. Not saying that you're confused by it, but I know in general there's like a lot of misinformation on it. I've not heard anything from the Lakers side on Ingram. Doesn't mean that he's not in the mix. As I reported a couple weeks, I guess 3 weeks ago now at this point, at the time I was hearing that guys like Ingram, LaVine, that was unlikely for them to go for like a 3rd star type. Now, has that potentially changed? As I recently reported, my understanding is that they want to see what this group looks like for the next 2-3 weeks or so, and then make a move off of that and just see where the whole, like, is the playmaking a real concern, and do they need to go get another point guard or another perimeter shot creator, playmaker? Is it still the backup center spot? Like, how do Jackson and Christian look once they come back? Is it another wing defender with Vando and that whole situation? So I think that they're still in evaluation and assessment mode in terms of biggest needs and just what this roster is going to look like come mid-January and late January. Now, of course, I always have to preface everything with like, could they make a move in an hour or tomorrow or in a week? Sure. But it seems to be that this was the first initial move. They want to see how this goes and then reassess what does the market look like, who else is available, because as you get closer to the February 6th trade deadline, more players become available, the prices for those players become clearer, and I think at that point with the clock ticking, you can have just more direct conversation as to like, all right, this is what we want, this is what we're willing to give up, like, are you willing to meet that? And if so, let's move forward, let's make a trade. So I think, I mean, Ingram is another tricky one with the salary. It's similar to Fox, so you got to get into the mid 30s. Probably looks like something like Rui plus Gabe plus something else, and then draft capital, though not quite sure how much draft capital. And I will clarify again with the firsts. The Lakers technically have 3 firsts that they can trade, but when I say trade, I need to clarify, to trade individually, as in if they are, let's say, making an Ingram trade and New Orleans wants a first, New Orleans can ask for the 2029 first, the 2030 first, or, keyword here is or, the 2031 first. If they want 2 firsts, and I don't think Ingram's going to go for 2 firsts, but this is a hypothetical, the only 2 firsts that the Lakers can trade in conjunction with one another are the 2029 and the 2031. So if LA wants to trade, they have 3 firsts that they can trade in an individual trade, like singularly. But if they want to aggregate those firsts and trade either 2 of them in the same deal or 2 of them separately, it has to be the 2029 and the 2031 because of the Stepien rule, which means you cannot trade firsts in consecutive years. And because they traded the 2027 first, they don't have access to 2026 or 2028, but they do have access to the 2029. But then if they trade the 2029, then they can't trade the 2030. If they trade the 2031, they also can't trade the 2030. Now they can trade the 2029 and the 2031 because those are alternating years. And if they trade the 2030, they kind of screw themselves because then they can't trade the 2029 or the 2031. So realistically, teams are going to want the soonest pick that they could get. They're going to want the 2029. And then if there's a second pick to be moved, it would be the 2031. One other thing to note is because they've traded 2029, 2030, and 2031 second round picks, I don't believe they can protect any of those, or it would have to be some type of weird protection that like the other team would agree to. But typically you would, if you do like a lottery protection, it would be, well, it rolls over, you get like a second round pick. The Lakers can't give up their 2029, 2030, or 2031 second round picks. They don't have access to them. And then final thing with it is they can do pick swaps. So that's where like technically they could trade 2029 and 2031 and then do like a pick swap with 2030, but it's not the same thing as actually trading the pick. And then the final thing again is technically they have 2027 1 through 4 protection that they own. So basically if it's 5 to 30, it goes to Utah. If it's a top 4 pick, Lakers keep it. They could trade that, but that's not a full first round pick. That's a top 4 picks of a potential first round pick. So it's, I hope that made some sense. I know it's a little complicated. Basically, the Lakers have access to trade 3 picks individually, but they can only trade 2 of them, really. So it's semantics, but like you can say they have 3 picks to trade, but really it's only 2 picks to trade, if that makes sense. Like, it would not make any sense for them to trade the 2030 pick. That would be nonsensical. Jorge Falcon Jr., how does Max lift AR's game? We need a 5 to maximize a... Oh, okay, sorry. How Max lifts AR's game, we need a 5 to maximize AD. Okay. I'm with you. I still think that it's got to be a 5 at a certain level to really warrant playing next to AD in like crunch time, for example. Like I still think the best version of the Lakers right now is probably going to be AD at the 5, LeBron at the 4, Austin at the 1, and then 2 3-and-D wings around those 2 guys. So that's why I wanted them to go get a 3-and-D wing. They got one in DFS. I still think arguably they could go get another one, or like a Bruce Brown type, who's more of like a 3-and-D shooting guard. But he could play up to the 3 or the 4 if you need him to. He was Denver's backup backup point guard during the title run and ran their second unit very well, as the Lakers saw firsthand. And I think he'd be a really good fit. But this is the Walker Kessler or Robert Williams case, right? Like if you get one of those elite defensive centers, rim protectors, both are going to come with, like Kessler, it's the contract being so low and Utah having such a high asking price. For Robert Williams, it's going to be just the injury history and the uncertainty there that he can even stay healthy for a full 82 game season plus the playoffs. But aside from those kind of hurdles with both of those guys, like that's the argument, is whether you start them next to AD, slot LeBron down at the 3, or you just play them as backup 5s, and then sometimes with AD in certain matchups, that those are the types of guys that can really maximize AD. And you can make different arguments for Jackson Hayes and Christian Wood enhancing AD in certain matchups or certain lineups, but of course those guys are nowhere near the caliber of defenders or rim protectors that Walker Kessler and Robert Williams are. So I agree with you. Like I think right now, if I had to pinpoint 2 needs for this group, it's probably another perimeter shot creator and another, better backup five. But you could also say they could use another wing defender, especially if that player, maybe that player has some, like Bruce Brown to me kind of checks a couple boxes where he does give you some of that perimeter organization and can help run an offense, but also can defend multiple positions, is tough, can, depending on the year, I guess, can shoot threes well. He just came back from his injury, just made his season debut. But I think you're on the right track. I just don't know if I don't know if the Lakers are going to view it as like start a center full time next to AD. Dylan DeVille and Brooks. Just so you guys know, I'm going to go about another 5 to 10 minutes, a real 5 to 10 minutes, because I do have a family obligation. So I will be out of here in a few. But Dylan DeVille and Brooks, why JJ not starting DFS? It's clear DFS is a better defender than Rui. One thing with this, too, is like the new guy, unless they have a certain cachet, if it's like a star, basically, they typically don't come in and immediately take the starting spot. It typically takes a game, a couple games, a few games for them to get acclimated. So I think with LA being shorthanded, they wanted to stick with what's been working, and Rui has been playing well. But again, I think if Rui starts to not play as well and DFS is just being solid and sturdy and playing the way that he plays, I think he likely will take the starting spot back. Sleepy Van Dangle, y'all celebrating 2 points, 0% from 3 in 20 minutes. I could do better. See, this is where I would point you to the defensive film on DFS. I just rewatched the game this morning, and my initial reaction was like, oh, like some solid plays defensively, but like nothing. But like rewatching it, I was like, this dude is he's a Swiss Army knife defensively. He can go from a guard to a center to a wing, and vice versa within the same defensive possession. And I think if you are really studying the film and really studying defense, DFS does a lot of really good things. It's not just about the box score. And if you're going to view DFS just in a box score lens, I think he is going to be disappointing, but that's not what the Lakers got him for. They need him to hit open threes. I'm not saying he blew it open lob. Like, there were certainly things he could do better. He also had a couple fouls, which I thought, like, a couple of tough shooting. Like, one was like Max was switched on to Jarrett Allen and was digging into him. He comes over, rotates, just slaps Jarrett Allen. And I've been, for those who have really been listening like all season, I've been advocating for the Lakers to foul and foul harder. And he had a couple of hard fouls where I think it was Mobley also was inside, and he just smacked Mobley in the arm and didn't let him get an and one. Whereas like I think it was a possession or two later, or somewhere in that range, Jarrett Allen gets the ball and Max kind of does a bit of a weaker slap, and Jarrett Allen goes up and gets an and one. And it's like, that's where I think DFS does little, like he saved 2 baskets there. That's not really going to show up in the box score. It's actually just going to look like 2 fouls. But, and yes, I think Jarrett Allen missed the free throw. And then I don't remember if Mobley did or not, but that stuff is important. So again, if you're just judging DFS on his points and his field goal percentage, I think you're going to be disappointed, but that to me is not his value. Super chat from Eeg. Good explanation on the picks. Thank you. Christie, Levine, DFS, Braun, AD, Reaves, Kessler, Connect. Milton, that top 7 is really strong. Levine plus Craig equals Rui, Gabe, Vando plus Mins. Side note, does Bruce Brown non-shooting scare you? Teams play way off of him. He's been an inconsistent shooter. The Denver year, actually, he shot like, of course it was against the Lakers, but he shot like 40-something% against the Lakers. And then I think he was like low 30s the rest of the playoffs, which is just how it goes when the Lakers play Denver. in theory, yeah, you'd rather have a better shooter there, but I do think he brings value in the two-way play and just the positional versatility on both ends. Where, I mean, one of the things I didn't even mention with Bruce Brown is like, I kind of mentioned he could play the four, but like in Brooklyn before he went to Denver, he was playing a lot of four or even five, and he's only like 6'4", 6'5", so he is an undersized player at that position, obviously, but he can screen and roll and make plays out of the short roll at a very high level. And I think he's a good decision maker. And he's also got some of that dog, some of that toughness, some of that ruggedness that I think the Lakers as a group could use. And like I thought already, again, DFS came in, he played a certain way, he played with a certain edge. He's talked about, he even said it in his intro press conference that like he's known LeBron for 9 years and been defending him for 9 years. And he's never had a real conversation with him until he got to the Lakers, because he's like, I don't make friends with guys. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in being nice. I don't believe in being friendly. I don't believe in being cool with guys. If you're not on my team, I don't mess with you. And that's an edge that like I don't think a lot of players on this team have. And I think adding another guy like that in Bruce Brown could go a long way. So especially if it's, the tricky thing is like the cleanest path to getting Bruce Brown would have likely have been D'Lo. So now you got to, I mean, like if it's Vando and Gabe, they're almost certainly going to ask for a first round pick for Bruce Brown just to take on Vando's contract. And the alternative is you could do Rui, but I don't know if they would do that. They as in the Lakers. So, and I don't know if Toronto would either. I guess it would just depend on the draft capital, but I'm with you. I mean, Kessler as if they could get Kessler, you have Levine in there. That is a tough top seven. I don't know if Milton's good enough to really be in a good playoff rotation, but we'll see with a bigger sample size. Super chat from Keon Park. Lakers Cavs game. I felt like Shake and Make was the main player we got. We can trade Gabe and have Shake be backup. PG need to give Shake more minutes. I think that I would like to see more from Shake, or the Lakers use Shake a little bit more than they did. As I mentioned, they were using him more as like a spot up catch and shoot guy. He did bring the ball up a little bit, but it was just to initiate the offense, not really to actually run anything. I would like to see what that looks like. I don't think I would disagree with him with saying he was the main player, because again, I thought DFS's defense was good and valuable, and he defended anyone from Donovan Mitchell to Evan Mobley and held his own. So I think DFS came in and made a defensive impact. Again, it's not always going to show up in the box score, but he does the little stuff. Now, if they trade Gabe, potentially Shake is I guess becomes the backup. I would like to have a little bit of a larger sample size, and I think the Lakers would too, in terms of just like what that looks like. But because the big downgrade there is the defensive end. Like Shake and Gabe, I think there's a pretty big gap defensively. As a shooter, Shake on the season has been better than Gabe. Now Gabe's been shooting it well the last like 2-3 weeks. We'll see if that sustains. Shake is bigger, and he does give the Lakers a certain identity where like if you take Gabe out, keep Shake in, and you don't add any smaller players, all of a sudden your entire rotation is 6'5" and above. Like a Shake 6'5", Austin 6'5", and anyone else playing on this team is 6'5" or taller. That's just a giant team. They don't necessarily have the imposing front court size that some other teams have, but maybe they go get that with someone else. But I would like to see Shake play more. Okay, I got 2 more minutes here, so I'm going to answer a couple more, then I will wrap. Big Baby Sports, hit the like button and subscribe. Please do. See, we got a big crowd tonight. Appreciate you, or today. Happy New Year again. Laker fan for life. You can add the stream, Jovan. Your wife wants playtime. Oh, man. You guys are great. Also said, Jovan is 6'6". We need him on the Lakers. Like, I'm I'm 1 year removed from my torn Achilles. I am available for a 10-day. ASD123 Yo-Yo, how about Lonzo? I think they need a bigger sample size of health, and the contract is a little tough to match, especially now that you traded D'Lo, but certainly possible. Revved, Jovan, do you think this roster can hold down the fort until closer to the deadline to potentially make a bigger move? I do. I think that the stretch of schedule coming up outside of, they got the tough Texas trip next week, or starting at the end of this week at Houston, at Dallas, but no Luka for the Dallas game. Outside of that, they're basically in LA for the next 3.5 weeks, or excuse me, in California for the next 3.5 weeks. They have one game at San Francisco and one game against the Clippers, but otherwise it's all home games and all obviously in LA or California. So they've got a nice stretch here to really pad the record. Theoretically, Jackson will play maybe Thursday against Portland. Vando and Christian could be back at some point this month. And if they get the band relatively healthy, no one else goes down, and they have a bit of a sample size of 7 to 10 games to evaluate the new guys and then also some of the injured guys, I think by the end of the month they have a clear picture of like what to do. And I think they can hold it down, but they're getting dangerously close to not being able to hold it down, because like I think the Gabe injury was sneaky big, just from like balancing out the rotation and with the way he's been shooting the ball recently. Like he's had some rough games as well, but as he tends to offensively, but overall he's been shooting the ball much better, and I think they really missed that. Randiculous Temp said DFS paired with an athletic point of attack guard like Bruce Brown and starting lineup moves needle. Gabe plus Vando plus first, done deal if Toronto accepts. What's the move after that? I mean, I would, if you really want to get wild and just put the first on the which I've been a proponent of putting the first on the table and being aggressive with it. I think Toronto, with the current market, Toronto would have to consider a trade like that. And you're giving up a guy in Vando who you haven't had for however many. I mean, it's been 32 games. We'll see if and when he makes his season debut. Gabe has obviously been very up and down this season, and I think Bruce Brown's just better. Then I say you go throw JHS in a first at Utah and try and get Kessler. And if you get Kessler, Bruce Brown, and DFS, let's just say starting lineup is something like Austin, Bruce Brown, DFS, LeBron, 80. Bench is Kessler, Rui, Dalton, and I guess Shake. That backup. Maybe you create a roster spot, sign someone like that. That 9th spot's a little weak. It's like Shake or Cam or Jackson or Christian. I don't love that 9th spot, but top 8 I really like. All right, wife is saying I got to go pick her up, so I'm going to wrap it here. I've been called into action, but I will wrap here. I will likely be back tomorrow night. I'm hoping to be back at the game, hoping to be feeling better. But we'll see one more day and night of rest. But that will do it for today's show. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. Apologies for not going live last night, but was New Year's Eve and needed some family time. But I will be back to regular programming, hopefully the rest of the week. But for those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button. Like this video if you've watched it this far or just joined. Please consider liking it and drop a comment. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, leave a 5-star review. I'll be back tomorrow night after the Lakers-Blazers game. I will talk to you all then, and hope you all had a happy new year, happy and safe new year. And bigger and better things are coming in 2025 for myself, for this channel, for the show. And we'll see if it's also the case for the Lakers. Got about a month and 5 days till the trade deadline. Let's see if they make another move. But I will talk to you all in about 30 hours or so. Super sticker here from Keon Park. Appreciate you. But that'll do it. Talk to you all very soon.